Hey everybody, are you a teacher or a leader or a pastor or just somebody who has to come up with new, fresh content every week that you have to present to people? Hey, look, I made this video to kind of help us along, to kind of encourage us, to keep those wheels moving well, and to keep our minds fresh when we create stuff to those that we present to so they can get the best from us. When I create a sermon or a lesson, or when you create a lesson or something you have to present to the people that you work with, most of the time what I'm doing is I'm taking a big idea, or in my case, a passage of scripture, and I usually try to take out 2 or 3 different points, because that seems like kind of the sweet spot, because I work in a venue where it's about half an hour to 45 minutes usually that I'm allotted. So what I try to do is get one big picture goal and then maybe 2 or 3 points that support that. But when I'm writing, when I'm just by myself in this office, there's no one else around, there's no one else hurrying me or judging me or looking at my content and disagreeing with it or agreeing with it or affirming it. What I try to do is I take the topic, take the idea that I'm working with, and I just write. I sit down and just write everything that comes to my head, whether it's good, whether it's bad. It could be rants, it could be ideas, it could be questions, things that I want to cover later. I just get it all out, and I don't really care about grammar or tone or any of those type of things. And you know, the biggest thing I don't care about when I'm writing is what I think other people are going to think about. Because there's no one here. I get it all out. I don't care if someone's going to judge me for it, because more than likely they're not going to hear it. I don't care if they're going to love it or hate it. I'm not writing at that moment for them. More than likely, when I'm writing just to get all of my thoughts, all of my ideas, all the things that have been ruminating in my heart out onto a piece of paper or out onto a document. And when I have that all down, it's not pretty. It doesn't flow very well. Usually the grammar's atrocious when I write like this, but it's all down on paper. And the good thing about that is no one's going to read it in the moment. Nobody's going to hear it. Nobody's going to interact with it. And I can let that set and come back to it the next day and go, man, you were really out to lunch on that one, or you were really onto something there. Might want to fine tune that. I can adjust it like someone who works with clay or with paints, and they can go in and adjust it later on, or cover up something or mold it into something different. But I have a lot of text to deal with. I usually, when I get up to speak for about a half an hour, I have about 5 pages worth of text. When it all comes out, when it's just a rough draft, there's usually about 10 to 12 pages. So I'm cutting, on average, every single week, about half of everything I write. But that's good, okay? You might think that that's awful. You know, is that a waste of time? It's absolutely not a waste of time at all, because it's fine-tuning everything you keep, and it shapes what you do keep. And the benefit of getting it all out is that it leads to other things that are fantastic. Maybe you see something in there, you're like, man, this doesn't really go with what I'm talking about, but it would be good for another lesson. I never thought about that, and I'm going to cover that in a different lesson, or a different talk, or a different whatever you want to do, whether it's a different sermon or whatever it is. I get it all out, and the good stuff I leave in. The stuff that was kind of tangent but I don't want to discard, I usually put it in another Word document and keep it for later, and I let that ruminate and germinate, and I think about that, pray about it, let it settle, and usually it becomes something else that really works well. Just don't discard the content that you're not going to use in your presentation. It might be useful later on down the road. There are some things that you'll say that are completely useless. They may be questions that you have for yourself or for your audience that really, when you go back and investigate it, aren't really worth a lot at all. And there's statements that you say maybe in your optimism or in your pessimism or in the attitude you were in at the moment that you realize, hey, I don't need to say that out loud. It was just how I felt in the moment. I'm just going to let that one go by the wayside. And that's absolutely wonderful. I would rather have far too much content than too little. Okay. When I'm usually speaking for a half an hour, okay, usually I have about an hour and a half worth of content that I've kind of whittled down, like 12 pages of content. If you were to kind of read that out, takes you about, an hour and a half if you're teaching it, how it goes. And so I would highly recommend that whenever you're thinking about what to talk about and you're like, I just don't know what to say. Usually we don't know what to say because we're thinking about how that other person's going to hear it. We're thinking about how that person's going to either judge it or be affirmed by it, or we're writing for applause or in our case, amens or any of those type of things. I wouldn't recommend doing that at all. Just get it all out and then go back and shape it. You never know where that's going to lead. Don't be thinking about what other people are going to think about your message or your lesson in the moment. In this moment, in your rough initial draft. Just get everything out, and you'll be better writer for it because of it. And what I don't pay attention to, okay, what I do pay attention to very, very much so later on, but initially I don't pay attention to grammar, I don't pay attention to tone, I don't pay attention to flow. It's all over the map, okay? Things I might repeat it 4 or 5 different times in the same message, but I get it all out, okay? Don't pay attention to that. Get it all out. You can go back later and edit it. You can go back later and shape it and make it all better. I want to encourage you in that. Like if you're a person who teaches and you're like, I just don't know what to say, I'm kind of getting burned out, I'm kind of getting to that point where I may be repeating myself over and over frequently with other people, let me encourage you to do that. In the stillness of your office or in the stillness of your kitchen table, when you're coming up with those new lessons and those new fresh things that you want to teach on, even if your audience may have been familiar with the content, they may be familiar with the passage you're teaching from, just take a moment or an hour and just click, and not care what anyone else thinks about it. I think in those moments, doing that with that kind of mindset will lead you to some really cool insights and lead you to places that are fresh and new, and allowing yourself to go there when you don't care what other people think, when you're not thinking about grammar, when you're not thinking about formatting or all that stuff. That stuff needs to happen, but it doesn't need to happen at that point. Consider it later on when you're in your second, third draft, but the first one, just let it go. And I think you'll enjoy it. It'll be a fun process, and it'll get a lot of stuff that's inside of you. And it really will get the wheels going. It'll get the brain moving. It'll get your excitement going for what you're going to teach. Even if you never use it, it'll be beneficial to you to go for it, to try it, and to have fun with it. Hey, this is what I do on my first initial draft. I can talk a lot more about that, but I think you get the point. I hope this has been beneficial to you, and we'll see you again next time. Y'all take care.